welcome to the From Nature to Nurture podcast. I am your host, Danielle, and I'm here today with our 28th episode. Not only is today super exciting because I am sharing a podcast interview, but it's also been about a year since I started this podcast. It is crazy to think that I've been doing this for a year because it still feels brand new. I'm still stumbling over some of the editing stuff, and there's lots of bloopers that you guys will never see. But it's been a really interesting journey. So, whether you have been here from the very beginning or this is your very first episode, thank you so much for listening. I have always wanted to do a podcast, so it feels really nourishing for me to still be doing this after a year. And I have learned so much. I've learned so much just about myself and my processes and my own herbal journey, but also I've learned so much from all these podcast interviews. So it's been a true blessing and pleasure to be able to talk to so many wonderful, very insightful people. And that is a great segue into the podcast interview that I'm sharing today, which is all about body literacy, women's health, and herbalism with Denise Rodriguez. Denise is a clinical herbalist, cycle, and sexual health educator. She's the owner of Eclipsic Herbs, where she teaches in-depth cycle tracking and personalized cycle health support. Denise's work focuses on bridging together body literacy and plant medicine. She believes that our cycle is not our shackle, it is our compass, that our cycles go beyond just for reproduction. It's core to our health and well-being. Her formal education and experience is rooted in bioregional herbalism in Northeastern America, incorporating her Colombian herbal tradition. She is certified as a fertility awareness educator with a focus on hormonal imbalances. Let's welcome Denise. Hi, welcome, Denise. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
I am really excited to talk about today's topic because it's something that got me started in herbalism as well, and a field that I am very passionate about in my own life. So I'm excited to kind of dig into your expertise. But for those who don't know you, if you could please share a bit about who you are and how you came on the plant path.
Yeah, okay. So it's kind of a longer story, but I feel like it has a good context to it. So my name is Denise Rodriguez, and I got through onto the plant path. I think, like many of us, it is through our own healing journey. So growing up, I was a relatively really healthy kid. I had a really strong immune system. I got my period when I was like 12, 11, like nothing out of the ordinary. It was pretty like normal. And it was honestly really cute. My parents both cried. It was adorable. Like when my mom brought out like the pads and my dad just started bawling. It was super cute, which not many people have, from what I've heard, have that like cute experience with their parents for like their first time, their first bleed. And yeah, it was just normal. I barely had cramps. I didn't really have any like teenage acne at the time. It was like it just kind of came and went. It was a regular starting out, which is pretty common. And it wasn't until that I got into my first like serious relationship that I was like, okay, I should do the responsible thing and get on birth control. Because I knew very early on I didn't like kids, I didn't want children. So I was like, all right, so let's do the responsible thing, get on birth control, get that all situated. So I kind of the way I went about choosing the birth control was like the highest efficacy. And it was like on Planned Parenthood, like the website. And I didn't really know a whole lot of choosing like birth control. I was like, oh yeah, the highest efficacy. That's kind of like what I needed. So I ended up choosing the Depo-Provera shot. So I had that. And with the Depo shot, it's not the best for your bone health. And I kind of like, I heard about that, but I didn't really understand it. I was like 20 at the time, I think. So I was on it for about a year, which is what their recommendation is to like not go past a year. I did that. And when I first started taking the shot, I did notice it was like a lot of water weight that just kind of like happened within like the first couple of months. It wasn't like I gained weight, it was just like I just got puffy and I was lethargic and I didn't really notice that it was like a side effect. I was just like living my life and I was like, "Oh, I'm just like I feel weird now." So fast forward about a year, and towards the end of it, I noticed that I started to get like hormonal acne, and I was like, okay, this is new, this is different. At the time, I don't think I was getting my period. It just kind of like stopped altogether. And when I decided to change birth controls, I went for the Nexplanon implant, the implant that kind of goes in your arm. And the water weight did go away, most of it. Like it was like I lost maybe like 20 pounds of that water weight, like within like the first like 2 months. But the hormonal acne got worse. And I was also spotting a lot. And like I didn't really know who to talk about it. It was during the internet time. So I could have like probably Googled it. But it was also not a lot of resources on like what is common for like these side effects or like people talking about these side effects. So I was spotting, I want to say continuously for like 4 months. And I was like, okay, this is my life now. So I was just wearing like liners and just kind of like hoping for the best. But I think what really got me like looking at like something's wrong is the hormonal acne. I remember looking and it was like maybe 1 week out of my cycle where I didn't have like a new breakout. It was just like continuous. And it was through like looking at different like causes for acne. Like I was changing my pillowcase. It was like everything like internet would recommend, like changing my pillowcase daily, drinking all the water, like all the things that like yeah, they're not bad, but they're also not they're not gonna help. But it was through these forums. I think I was like looking at like makeup products that could cause breakouts because I was going all of the deep dives into like what could possibly be causing this really bad, horrible cystic acne. And it was through the forums that I was like, oh yeah, by the way, I had this birth control, which is the implant that I was also on, and that's what was causing it. And that was kind of like the light bulb moment for me. And I was like, oh, it's this. And at the time, I didn't have health insurance. So I was like, okay, how can I get this out? It was through Planned Parenthood that I was able to get it. But I knew, I think I was only on year two, and I knew to get it out early would be a little bit extra. So I ended up having to go overseas to get the implant taken out in Colombia, where their health insurance is like more affordable. So went overseas, took it out, and I was like, okay, cool. Now this horrible acne will finally go away. And it didn't. It got a lot worse. And it was like, it's only looking back that I realized just like the unhealthy habits that I picked up because, not because of the birth control, but I think because I didn't have that like immediate feedback that we get with our periods. I, because of the hormonal acne, I ended up going vegan for a bit, keto. I was doing vegan keto, which is very, if you know, like keto and vegan, that's like no fats, but also no animal products, but also like no cheese, no dairy, no none of that. So it was very restrictive. I remember just because of like how desperate I was very honed in to like safe foods. So I had like kind of an unhealthy relationship with food where I would have just like a big bowl of like veggies and like some tahini on top. And that was my dinner like every single day. Just because I was so committed to trying to find a way out of the hormonal acne. I was just so committed that it didn't bother me that I was only having vegetables and tahini, and that was kind of it. So it was kind of like an unhealthy eating relationship that way, where it wasn't unhealthy food, it just wasn't nutritious food. And I didn't know like what I know now about like the building blocks that your hormones need. So it did leave me with like some of that. I also was working out a lot because of the water weight that I had gained. I wasn't sure exactly what was causing the water weight. So I was also working out like 5 times a day. I was about 5 times a day, 5 times a week. I was also going to university. I was paying through university. So I had like two serving jobs and going to school. So it was like a lot of stress and all of these. Like I didn't know that was going to cause my hormones to not be the best. And then it was through like a, once again, because I didn't have health insurance, and health insurance in Colombia, as a Colombian, I do have access to more affordable health insurance. I was getting my wisdom teeth removed over in Colombia. And that's kind of like my first introduction into the plant path was through my dentist, which is always wild to me. So I got my wisdom teeth removed, and at the dentist office from the surgeon himself, got like a prescription pad, and he was like writing a prescription for like pain pills. He's like, all right, you're gonna need these. Definitely you need these. And also take this other prescription down 3 doors. You'll see like a big shop with a bunch of plants and give this to the lady. And I was like, okay, cool. So got the pain meds, went down 3 doors. It was like a cute little like plant shop, and they were all fresh plants, mind you. They were all fresh plants lining the walls. And this cute little old lady got the prescription, and she got like a little bundle of flowers, wrapped them in newspaper. And she's like, oh, this is calendula. You'll be using this as a mouth rinse because it helps with the healing of your mouth and the sutures that will go away over time. And that was my first introduction. And that is wild to me. So did that, did the mouth rinses like how she recommended, and wisdom teeth were fully healed over like next couple of like days basically. Didn't have any issue. And that's like that was like the light bulb moment where it was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that plants could be used this way. So I did like a deep dive into different plants that could help with hormones. That was still like my focus because I was still dealing with the hormonal acne. And I got a lot of results. Once again, the internet is amazing, but I also wasn't really getting anywhere. So I was trying like the dandelion root, the vitex, anything that would come up as like, this is good for your hormones, but it really wouldn't stick. Like it would help a little bit. And then because I think it's because I had like that very visual cue that something was wrong hormonally, that I could see like if this is actually like working or not. I was also impatient, so I probably wasn't doing the best at like keeping up with it. I also like it was very like Wild West, like we're gonna try this one, we're gonna try this one. And I was like, all right, let me actually like get into this. And I ended up doing through the Herbal Academy. I think that was like the most popular herb school at the time. I did their intermediate and beginners course on herbalism. And that's when I was like, okay, I can actually start to like work on my digestive health, my nervous system health. But what I found, and I also ended up doing the School of Evolutionary Herbalism. I also did their clinical course. That was also really good because I was just obsessed at this point, and I was like devouring every herbal book because I was like, how do people not know about this? And my only critique at the time was like my hormones were getting better, but it was also very like vague on like hormone health and like women's health. I remember reading a book where it was like, oh, this herb is good for like fluids in like the woman's body. I'm like, cool. What are these fluids? What are these fluids doing? Like, what's going on? What does that mean? Like excess fluids. And I'm just like, what does that mean? Excess fluids. And it was very like superficial. So I ended up through like just the people that I knew at the time hearing about like fertility awareness. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting, like cycle tracking for like hormone health. And I kind of did a deep dive that way. I ended up doing like a certification for fertility awareness. So now I can understand what these fluids are and not just like take this herb for excess fluids. So I'm like, all right, what fluids we talking about here? Is it arousal fluid? Are you about to ovulate? Like what's going on? So it was just like a whole other world. And just understanding your body so amazing, and understanding like hormonal health and how herbs can impact that, and like having that direct feedback is just like it's honestly life changing to the point where like I don't have hormonal breaks. I'll have like maybe one or two as is typical, but like what I had before, like I wish younger me knew all of that information, which I knew. I had to go on this journey just to like get that understanding and why talking about hormones and health is important. But yeah, that was my very long journey onto the plant path.
That is wild. Wow, that's so cool. And yeah, you hit on so many things that I know a lot of us relate to where like we're not taught all the ins and outs of different birth controls and like why you should choose one and not the other or whatnot. I know I went through a bunch of different types and I actually ended up pregnant twice on two different types of birth controls. So I definitely don't believe in birth control because obviously it didn't work for me. But um yeah, that's just so interesting. And then wow, so cool that you got the prescription for the calendula. I love that.
From a dentist.
Yeah, wow, that's so cool. Yeah, that's incredible and a really interesting journey to go on where you started out with getting an herb for oral health and then you ended up transitioning that passion into hormonal health, which makes a lot of sense. And yeah, so true that sometimes some of the herbal teachings are kind of vague, like you're talking about like excess fluids. What is that? I
I keep coming
personally,
around that a lot. Yeah.
yeah,
I've
yeah,
seen it multiple times and it's just like, what does that mean?
yeah, sometimes it's hard to teach such intricate topics in an accessible way without having to go into like a full deep anatomy lesson, right? So that's cool that you got to do the extra training with the fertility awareness method and kind of be able to pull everything together because obviously having that biological foundation is going to help in terms of transitioning that into the herbal world. Was there a specific plant that you said you tried a bunch of different plants for your hormonal health? Was there a specific plant that like really unlocked it for you personally and like a plant that you have a passion for now because of how much it helped you?
I would probably say passion flower. Like I said, passion. I immediately thought passion flower. And it's funny because people don't think of it like as like, oh, it's for your hormones, but like it's a nervine, it's sedative, but it has just because our nervous system is so hardwired into our health and well-being that just like having that to like bring you down as someone that's very like not stressed, but like I like to get things done. Like I'm a very like type A personality, even though I'm an introvert at heart. But like I'm a very like I need to get this done. I need to get this done. And sometimes it's very hard to like shut that down, especially in like a hyper capitalist society where we're like work, 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 do, go to school, study, do all the things, and it's very hard to like mellow down. And then if you think about it, that's really smart that our body's like that means that there's something going on. There's like stress. We're trying to like move resources to make sure that like you get enough cortisol, you have enough adrenaline to do the things. But then that also means that your hormones take a hit because it's not time to like ovulate and do all those things. And it was very hard for me to like shut that down. So I think passion flower is really good to just like help me get out of my own head a little bit and just kind of like, okay, I'm going to sit. I'm not going to think about work. I'm not going to think about like my next to-do list. I'm just going to relax, watch some TV, and just kind of be in the moment. And I think passion flower is really good to like just shut all that down, especially like right before bed when you're like, okay, tomorrow, what am I going to do?
I'm that same person where I am like a type A go 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 person and I have a really bad habit of overbooking myself because I want to do all of the things. And then once you start tying that into like your energy levels for different parts of your cycle, like you overcommit during times that you need to be resting. And so I know passion flower has actually played a big role in my life as well as trying to like help myself remember that rest is productive because sometimes you have to rest to be able to be productive. I love passion flower. That's a good one. Cool. So you took the fertility awareness class and then started bridging the biological with the herbal world together. And then you went on to become like a coach for women and kind of develop an herbal line to help women with their herbal health.
Yeah, that's basically what I focus on now is specifically like hormone health and hormone related issues because that's such a broad topic within itself. It's very hard to like figure out like, okay, so I'm spotting and understanding like the biology of why you're spotting. That's why I think cycle tracking is honestly foundational. I honestly think it should be taught for everyone. Anyone that's been to any of my herbal classes will know I will teach biology first as a foundation, and then we'll talk plants. Just because it is that initial feedback, especially if you are lucky enough to be getting your period, to know if you're bleeding too much, if you're bleeding not enough. And it's specific to your own body because what is normal for you in your cycle is going to be different from my cycle. So having you understand how long are your cycles, how much pain are you in? Because when we think of like, oh, my last period, well, when was my last period? Was I in pain? I don't really remember. And just having that practice of like writing everything down, tracking what's going on, and then seeing if the herbs that you're taking, which through understanding our own biology, we can understand that it takes roughly 3 cycles to know that what you're doing right now, if it's helping or not. So when we're talking about supplements and we're talking about herbs, you need to give it 3 cycles and not just like change out to the more flashy new herb that you just found. And just kind of giving it that time. And I think having that understanding is yeah, truly game changing.
What has been the most surprising thing that you learned in your women's health studies or through working with your clients?
I think probably it was when I was doing my fertility awareness certification. And for those that don't know what that is, that's like the professional form of like cycle tracking. And it was that ovulation is so much more than for reproduction. As someone that doesn't want kids, I was just like, I don't want to know about my period. Like, I don't really care. Like, it wasn't interesting to me in any form. But once I found out that like through ovulation is how we enter the luteal phase, through ovulation is how we produce progesterone, and that impacts our bone health, cardiovascular health, breast health, mental health, immune system. It's key to our own health. So it kind of took it out of this like pigeonhole that people put like, oh, ovulation and your cycles for having babies. Like, no, it's key to our health. And that's like something that I'm now getting into like just like not preaching about, but also just kind of preaching about that it's not about having babies. It can be, but it's also central to like your overall health and well-being.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That was a surprising thing for me when I learned that as well, because I also practice fertility awareness method, and yeah, the pigeonhole is real. It's like all everyone ever talk about is the only reason that you should track your fertility is to get pregnant or to not get pregnant. And yeah, there's so much more to it. Do you mind giving a brief overview of the fertility awareness method?
Yeah, so the fertility awareness method itself is actually an umbrella term. There is, last I checked, like 30 to 40, maybe even 50 different methods. And within those methods, there is different variability on like effectiveness because under that umbrella, there's like the, for instance, simple thermal method, which is kind of like the more researched and more like science backed type of method. But within that same umbrella, there's things like cycle tracking apps where, like, oh, I will predict your next period based on your previous periods, which that's not really how our body functions because things like stress, travel, illness, all of these things can have an impact on our cycle and can kind of delay or push back our period. So it's kind of like a bigger umbrella term. But in essence, it's a form of tracking how long your follicular phase is, how long your luteal phase is, roughly when ovulation is occurring. And that gives you a lot of information into your overall health. Because ideally, when we talk about like hormonal balance, which is kind of like this big buzzword right now, like, oh, hormone balance. But no one really talks about what exactly is hormone balance. It's not an equal amount of estrogen to progesterone, as a lot of people kind of like hint at it because we actually make, I think it's like 1,000% more progesterone than we do estrogen naturally. It's actually the length of the follicular phase compared to the luteal phase. Ideally, you want them to be equal because you want a interplay between these two hormones because it's estrogen seen like as like this not the best hormone because a lot of people talk about like estrogen dominance and like the issues with estrogen, but it's not that it's a bad hormone. It just needs to have its buddy, its progesterone to counterbalance those effects. So, yeah, fertility awareness is a way for you to see how you are progressing through your cycles and giving you that feedback. And when you do look into fertility awareness, it is important to like look at the different types of fertility awareness. So, I do recommend the symptothermal method. So, this is a form that has you tracking your basal body temperature. So this is your at rest temperature and your cervical fluid, which is fluid that is coming from the cervix that is directly impacted by estrogen, which is why we have these mystery fluids that sometimes appear throughout our cycle.
I have a quick question about temping.
Yeah.
Because I know a big issue that like I've had in the past is like my partner waking up early, which wakes me up early, which like disrupts the sleep cycle so that my temperature isn't, or like having dogs in the bed or people with small children and stuff like that. So do you have any advice around people who don't have like the picture perfect wake up from their deep sleep and then take their temperature, like kind of, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would think of is trying to see, like, for instance, for your partner that he wakes up really early, is taking your temp and tracking to see how that deviates. And the bad thing is that you would have to, not have to, but you would ideally still be taking your time temperature at that time, even on the days that you wouldn't have to necessarily. Or there is the newer thermometer, the temp drop, which it does have its own algorithm, which is kind of like the downfall to it, but it is made to help those that like they don't have like the best night's sleep. So it's taking your temperature periodically throughout the night and it's averaging everything out. So that could also be a way around that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I don't temp anymore because it's too much with different sleeps every
Hmm.
day, kind of thing. I don't have a good consistency, but I know when I was, it was like all over the place because of that, and that's why I stopped. I never thought about doing temp drop. That's a good idea. Thanks. Um, so I want to pivot a little bit more onto your personal path. I'd love to talk more about your Colombian culture and how that has kind of shaped into your herbal path as well, because I think that's beautiful that you come from a culture that has a really rich, still still going herbal practice.
Yeah, definitely. And it wasn't until like honestly within like the last like 2 years that I really realized how herbalism is seen, but it's not really seen. It's like interwoven into the culture, which is different. And that experience that I had with the dentist, it does still happen. And I think they're trying to do like a more Western push where they are trying to get more like just pharmacy only. And I do still try to like find people that still have that knowledge of herbalism within like the medical community. And there's still doctors that are like, oh, unless you want to go the natural route, in which case I'd recommend X, Y, or Z. But yeah, it was honestly surprising to me that it was still so interwoven. Like, for instance, if you go to like a coffee shop in Colombia, if you don't want to have like the coffee, which of course everyone's having the coffee, but if you don't want that, they also have tea. And a really common one is yerba buena or spearmint tea. And it's really common to have that. I'm actually having some right now where like the leaves are still in the cup and you're just kind of like sipping around it. And it's usually from the fresh plant. So usually they will have it in the back or like just like the plant is like on the windowsill and they'll take a couple leaves and make you the tea. And that is, it's so cool that it's still so common. And it's more common to see fresh herbs over there. Like if you'll walk by like an herb plant shop, all of them will be fresh. They'll still be like in the planters, and like the herbalist will go and like slip you a little bit and put it in a little paper bag. Or if you go to like grocery stores, calendula, huge, huge over there. Like you'll see it just like kind of in the same way that you see like thyme here, that you go to like the grocery store and like they'll have a thyme plant. It's like that, but like with calendula, calendula's like really common just because it's a very pretty flower, but also people use it for like foot soaks or for wounds or different types of cleaning because there's also like a spiritual aspect to it. I'm still learning a lot about cacao and its aspects because it's an herb. We don't think of it as an herb, but it's definitely an herb, especially over there where like it's more of a beverage. It's not so much like a dessert like it is here when people I'm like, oh, I'm having a hot chocolate, and people are just like a hot chocolate. But it's not as sweet as it is here for a dessert, and usually have it like as a afternoon treat. You'll have it with like some cheese or some bread, and it's kind of more of like a community thing. And it's great because it's like so high in magnesium, and it's amazing for like when you're on your period, especially when you're like craving that like chocolate. And there's things like, honestly, I want to say a lot of it is also because of the climate. Like for instance, spearmint is blended a lot of the times with lemonade. Lemonade, like fresh lemonade, is huge over there. And they'll do like lemonade with coconut and spearmint, or lemonade with like mango that they get from like their garden in the back, or mandarins, or like it's very fruit based, which is really cool. There's like a huge variety of fruit over in Colombia just because of like the Amazonian rainforest. And because it's so hot, that's where we see a lot of the herbs come out. There is hibiscus tea a lot of the time. And like you'll just go to like a restaurant and they'll have like this display of fruits and lemonades that they make in-house in the moment, which is super cool that they're still able to like have that. And trying to like bring that herbalism in the cuisine forward has been not so much of a struggle, but it's more of like something I'm trying to like get back into, like having cilantro with every meal. And it's something that you don't think about, but cilantro is really good for like digestion, and it's really good at releasing like heavy metals that are in the body, and like all of these benefits that we're just like it's done for taste, but also it is an herbal practice within itself.
Oh yeah, I'm always talking about really, I mean, even just starting your herbal practice in the kitchen, because all of our culinary herbs also obviously hold medicinal value as well. We're just not taught about that here in the West. And I love that Colombia, it's like all fresh plants. That's definitely not what you see here. We focus on more dried plants, which is really interesting. Even in like our more abundant climates, like I can grow a lot of things here in Tennessee, but a lot of times I harvest dry and then I work with it. I didn't even think about just snipping some fresh mint into my drink. I don't know why that sounds so dumb, but
Because we're not used to it. And like it's
yeah.
not until like you're in the coffee shop and you're like sipping it and you're like, wow. Because I mean I grow spearmint at home now and I just like put it right into the drink, no fuss. And I'm just like, wow, yeah, I could just drink around it.
Well, yeah, especially if it's fresh, you're not, I mean, you're probably not breaking it down to like as small as it is when it's dried, and so it's all also easier to drink around. Because when you were originally talking about having the peppermint in there, I was like, oh, it's gonna be like everywhere. And then I was like, oh, it's just fresh, so it's just like the whole leaves, which are pretty big. So that's a lot easier just to drink around. I'm growing mint for the first time this year, so I might be doing that a lot.
It's so fun. And it's also so nice to just take a little bit and just enjoy it while you're like sitting with the plant, for instance, and just like having that connection that way.
Oh, absolutely. I love that. I love that. Is there a favorite like Colombian herbal plant that you love, like specifically for more of the medicinal side of herbalism?
Honestly, I would say cacao, hot chocolate, 100%. I
Yeah.
will make it a routine. Like right now, I'm on my cycle day one. I just started my period, so I will definitely be having a hot chocolate after this. And just, it's honestly just like almost a ritual in a way because it's something comforting. It's almost like a liquid hug. And it's also, it has that high magnesium. So if you are like, for instance, having cramps, it just kind of like soothes everything. It just helps you like wind down and be more in within your body, which for a lot of people, their periods are uncomfortable and you kind of want to get out of your body, but it's a way to like get comfortable within the discomfort because like some achiness, some tenderness, that's normal. And of course, if you're having like more intense like period cramps, then there is other herbs that can help with that. For like passion flower. I love passion flower for like literally everything. But if you're like a little achy, a little tender, and you just kind of want to sit and be cozy under a blanket, like just having some hot chocolate is just beautiful.
That sounds really nice if it wasn't like 85 degrees here.
Yeah, it dropped. Luckily, it dropped down. It was 85 yesterday, and I was just like, I'm not ready for all this.
Yeah, that's a lot. I love cacao. And yeah, American hot chocolate is not even, it's like a whole different thing. It's not even the same at all.
No, no. So if you want it, like I would recommend if you can go to the grocery store and look at your Spanish aisle, there's like these tablets of cacao that are already like I'm trying to think of like how to describe them. Because like they come in different shapes, but it's more of like a cacao tablet that you just put on the stove with either hot water. I usually make mine with milk just because it's a little bit more enjoyable that way. And it'll dissolve within the milk. So as you're stirring it, it'll just get frothy. And it's just like it's a different form where it's like more concentrated on the cacao itself, not so much the cocoa that you would think of like if you're getting like a Hershey's cocoa. That's different.
Do you sweeten your cacaos or do you drink them
They're
raw?
already pre-sweetened and they'll have each country will have a different variation. Like the one I try to get it from Colombia just because I love the cinnamon and clove that they add to it. If it doesn't, I add the cinnamon and clove. So I would like steep the cinnamon and clove in the water for like 20 minutes and then add the cacao. And it's already pre-sweetened, so it's not too much. And if it is on the sweeter side, I'll add a little bit of water to make it not as sweet. But yeah, usually they're sweet because you want to think of it as like a treat. You're treating yourself, especially when you are on your period. So,
Yeah, I normally add cinnamon, ginger, turmeric, and
nice.
then reishi and lion's mane extract powders as well to my cacao.
Love it. I love that. Especially ginger. Ah, amazing.
So cozy.
hmm
This is the wrong time of year for this conversation. I'm gonna have to like make a cacao and then cool it down and do like a cold cacao.
Yeah, you could do it like later on in the day too when it's not as
Yeah.
hot.
Yeah. Um, cool. I love that. Um, Outside of cacao, are there any specific plants that have been calling to you lately, whether that is just like in relationship or something that has been paramount to your well-being?
Two came to mind. So there's two that are currently growing near my property. So the first one is mugwort. So mugwort is growing like right outside my door. And I'm seeing it like creep up and I'm just like I haven't really worked with mugwort. Like I know it's good for like not good for, but it can help with like lucid dreams and it has like that really bitter quality to it that I'm always like super interested in. Probably because I have like a very hot constitution. And anytime my body tastes something bitter because it's cooling, it's just like I need more. So I've been wanting to like play and get to know mugwort a little bit more. And then the other one is Japanese knotweed. I have some growing because we have like an area in the back. I live kind of along this conservation area, so you can't really like you can go in it, but like people can't go and like mess with it, which is nice. And there's some Japanese knotweed that's been growing. And I did a bioregional herbalism class last year with can't remember her name, but her website's Milk and Honey, and she was talking about how like we can work with invasives in like a more like respectable way and getting into because Japanese knotweed is edible and it's kind of like like a bitter asparagus. So I collected some today because I saw like the early shoots coming up and I was just like, ooh. And I harvested some. I have them in the kitchen, so I will let you know how that goes. But I'm just like, you know what? And it's so interesting because in Japan they like really like itadori, which is what it's called over there. And it's kind of like their vegetable over there where it comes in the early spring. So when we think of like dandelion leaf for us in the early spring when we're foraging, having something that is quote unquote invasive, but we can respectfully take an abundance of it because it is more abundant in our area.
Yeah, we become the predators for it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not an issue over there because they eat it because it's edible. And it doesn't like overtake the environments or the habitat because people are kind of like used to like, oh hey, let me get some of that because it's growing out in the wild. It's kind of like blackberries here, where like they're growing outside and you take some, and you're like, oh cool, blackberries. It's kind of like the same relationship. And I think that's probably why it doesn't have like the same like habitat issues that they are having here.
Yeah, we have Japanese knotweed that grows along a lot of our like riverbanks and stuff around here as well. Okay, so going back to a bit of your work, um, what are some of like the most common issues that you see women coming to you with, and what are some of like your most common answers for them?
So issues, there is the kind of like the similar underlying issue, but it presents differently, which is why I always teach about like how your own body is like unique and to your own situation. But the issue underneath it, so starting with like the issue at hand, and it's usually not enough sleep. There is usually not enough, they're not eating enough, which is weird to hear because in our culture, it's usually taught that like we're eating too much. And that's why there is like this big push of like, you need to be eating healthy and you need to be eating less and calorie in, calorie out. That's all that matters. But a lot of the times, what I'm seeing is people aren't eating or they're not eating, focusing on like nutrient rich foods. They're eating, but it's not like things like fiber and protein and complex carbs and all the things that we kind of like focus on now. So there's that component of just not eating enough, not having enough fuel, and also doubling down on like the cycle itself. We eat, it's not so much that we eat more, is that we need more fuel in the luteal phase. And a lot of the time we're taught to like restrict these cravings. So I'm like, oh, I'm craving something more. Let me be good in quotation marks. But in reality, our body our metabolism changes in the luteal phase. That's why we can track it with our basal body temperature. That's kind of like the main biomarker because of that metabolic switch. So we require more fuel in the luteal phase. So yeah, just not eating enough, high stress, chronic stress. It's not only high stress, but it's also chronic stress that can also lead to not sleeping the best at night. So all of these are what I typically see, and also over exercising. That is also a big one, like pushing to like work out at the same level every single week when we do naturally switch from wanting to work higher intensity to maybe not high intensity and doing like mobility work and feeling like you always need to do cardio, but you don't. You actually need to do more like weight training because that's really good for your bone health. So there's things like that. And how it presents is really interesting because it can come up as really long periods or short periods, really long cycles, which really long cycles, as someone that also has longer cycles, it makes total sense because your body's like, what are you doing? This seems like an unsafe environment because underneath it all, your body is intelligent. Your body is just like, it can see, but it can't like understand what's going on. So if you're working out 5 times a week, not eating enough, not sleeping enough, what your body senses is that like, oh, we're in danger. There's conflict in the village. There's something's going on. Let's move resources so you can get all of this cortisol, all of this adrenaline, so you can go out there and do the things that you need to do to survive. Because our body ultimately wants to have you living healthy and happy lives, surviving. And if that's not the case, then it's moving resources. Therefore, our hormones are kind of like the back burner because it does take a lot of resources to ovulate, for instance. So if it's doing that and ovulation gets delayed, we get these longer cycles where your cycles are 40 days long, 50, 60, 70, 80 plus until your body's like, okay, we now feel safe to move these resources. So I typically see longer cycles now currently, obviously intense period cramps, which once again, some achiness, some tenderness, that's normal because as the uterine muscles are contracting, that's what we're feeling, especially like in our lower backs. But like more intense, like debilitating pain, that is a symptom that comes up a lot where like something else can be going on underneath the surface. But yeah, I think those are like the main ones that I'm seeing a lot of right now.
Okay, I actually didn't know that that's why our temperature changes. And I knew that it changed. I just didn't know that it was because of your metabolism, and that makes so much sense. That was a brand new thing for me.
Yep. Biology's cool.
Yeah, yeah, there's just so much that we're not taught. I feel like we weren't taught really anything about women's health other than this is how to like not get pregnant, put on a condom,
Mhm.
like or whatever. Like that's
Yeah,
basically all we
yeah.
were taught.
And we weren't even taught that. It was kind of like insinuated through like media because I didn't really have a class on it. The
Hmm.
classes that I got was like abstinence only. If you have sex, you will die. And that was kind of it.
Yeah,
It was through media that were like, oh, condoms are a thing.
yeah,
And that's,
yeah.
we don't know how they work. They just kind of work.
Yeah, in the movies, exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think we talked about anything like that in school either. I know we talked about STDs, and
Hmm.
that's all I can remember. And it
Yep.
wasn't until I was in my like mid 20s that I started like digging more into women's health and like listening to podcasts with different types of people, and it was crazy. And I'm still here I am in my 30s learning.
Yep.
That's so wild. Um, yeah, it's really sad that a lot of the things that are considered normal, like all of the PMS stuff, like, oh, it happens to everyone. Like, a lot of people just assume that that's how it's supposed to be, and that's just not. Like, normal does not mean, or common does not mean normal.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
definitely.
I'm so
Yep.
glad that we have people out there that are learning more like you to help spread the information because it is super confusing, especially when you start looking at different hormonal imbalances and like there's a lot of symptoms that overlap between like if you have too much estrogen or too much progesterone, like a lot of the symptoms can look exactly the same but like be like totally different issues. So yeah, really getting to know your own body, like you said, like everyone is a little different, and knowing like what your balance looks like for you versus your friend.
Exactly. I think that's honestly, that's why I think everyone should learn how to track your cycle, which if you're listening to this, learn how to track your cycle or just like get into it. Like how I started was I heard of the book Taking Charge of Your Fertility. And as someone that once again doesn't want kids, I was just like, that sounds weird. But it does such a deep dive on like how our hormones work, how to track your cycle. And it's kind of like it's basically a textbook. I ended up buying it. And it's just it gives you like troubleshooting for like PMS issues. And it's just such a revolutionary way to view your own body instead of it being like, oh yeah, your cycle's always for babies and that's it. And if you get painful periods, that's just how it is.
Yeah, ridiculous. Take a birth control pill, right? That'll fix all your
Take a birth
problems.
control pill. You don't have to suffer through all that.
What are some of your favorite tools for people for tracking?
Introductory, probably taking charge of your fertility just because it's a lot of libraries carry it and that's like a very like accessible way to get into it and just kind of having that as like a jumping off point. The podcast Fertility Friday, is that what the podcast
I
is?
think so, yeah.
By Lisa Hendrickson. Amazing podcast. Honestly, it's Fertility Friday. Yeah, the Fertility Friday podcast. Amazing. It was a really good resource, especially the earlier, like the first like 20 episodes where she's breaking down like about the method and what the method can teach you. It's really good resource as is. If you want like more of like a professional viewpoint on it, there is so it's the Association of Fertility Awareness Professionals, and it is more of like the professional organization for fertility awareness, and they have like multiple schools that they accredited, and underneath that they have practitioners that they certify, and they're trying to push out more educational content. It is more geared towards like for instance, physicians that want to learn more about the practice because they're trying to like level up the understanding, which is really neat that it's not just like what they had back in the day where you would just like chart your period and like see how things go. This is like more of like the actual organization behind it. So if you want more of like the research behind it, they are a really good resource to have. I think those are the main one. Oh, and for a cycle tracking app, the Read Your Body app, I absolutely love that app. It is so customizable and you can track basically anything you want. Like for instance, I'm currently tracking like my anxiety levels, stress, if I'm having dessert. That way by the end of the cycle, I can have like a bird's eye view and see like, wow, I was really anxious in my luteal phase. Or I'm noticing that I'm getting really anxious like pre-ovulation for some reason and having that knowledge, I'm like, okay, so I need to make sure I have enough passion flower or chamomile if I want to work with chamomile, just like that pre-ovulatory phase, just to kind of support it. And that's a really good way to incorporate herbs in supporting our cycle and hormonal health is kind of like having that knowledge and then bringing in like, okay, am I sleeping the best during this time? Like kind of like pinpointing what exactly you can support more during that specific time. So really good app.
Yeah, that's cool is look at the whole picture because a lot of people will just focus on ovulation, bleed.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
those are like the main events that we like notice. We notice when we're like ovulating because we're like, wow, we have all of the energy. But sometimes that energy can be like too much. I also think of like the energetics of it, where it's like the inner summer. And sometimes it's a little bit too much and you get like too antsy and you want to be doing things, but like your brain also wants to be doing too much. And that's like the anxiety component. So there's also a cool way of like looking at the energetics of each one and seeing like which one could use a little bit more support.
Oh, I love that. I'd like to talk about herbs, of course. Um, and talk about like some of your favorite plants for kind of like the most common things that people are coming to you for. Obviously, I know lifestyle changes make like the biggest impact. Um, but let's talk about some herbal support.
Yes. So the way I like to frame it is I like to think of it as like different pillars. So there's roughly like six pillars that I usually work with. The first one is body literacy because that is, I will keep talking about it, foundational. It is game changing. So understanding even if it's just like how long your cycle is, just starting that way. Because most of us do already kind of like do a little bit of body literacy. We start out tracking our period. When did my period start? How long was my period? And then just taking that knowledge like a little bit of a step further as you go. So there's that first pillar. The other pillar is probably sleep because it's so key to like nervous system regulation, making sure that we're getting and also like all of like the biological processes that our body goes to when we sleep. And that is where the herbal aspects come because I like to like bind, not bind, but combined lifestyle and herbs. How can herbs help support our lifestyle habits? So, for instance, if you have a lot of insomnia, if you're having trouble getting that like the to-do list out of your head, things like passion flower or skullcap are really good. Skullcap's really good for like that like list that won't go away. And like I've come into the habit where I'm already thinking of like what to do the next day as I'm laying down. I'm like, okay, I need to shut it off. So having things like that really good in a tincture form. That way you don't have to get up at 3 a.m. to go to the bathroom, especially if you're having like a bedtime tea a little too late, which I always tend to do. But yeah, things like passion flowers, skullcap, chamomile, even like towards like the evening to help like wind down. The other pillar I do is resetting. So finding like a habit that you enjoy doing and letting you kind of reset stress level wise. So meditation, reading, writing, tea time. It can be like herbal, doing something that is more aromatic. So like things in the mint family, lemon balm, rosemary, rose, things that kind of get the senses awakened so you can be sitting in the moment and not once again detaching from like the to-do list that you have in your head. The other pillar I have is digestion. Digestion is how we get those building blocks for our hormones. And there is so many different herbs. Like a lot of the herbs that we think of are really good for digestion. So I think the ones that come to mind is chamomile. Chamomile is very versatile, very amazing. It's good for like nervous system, but also for your digestion, especially when there's like an intersect because there's sometimes an intersect between those where you get like anxious and like you have like like stomach anxiety. If your anxiety is specifically like located, like if you feel it in the body, in the stomach, chamomile is really good for that. There's bitters if you're getting like a lot of acid reflux. So things like dandelion root are really good, and it's really good for the liver because the liver is processing everything we come into contact with, including everything that we come into contact with, and also our like own internal processes. It does process things like estrogen and cortisol. So it's also really good to like support the liver. So things like dandelion root are really good. Artichoke leaf is really good. And I think the last pillar is movement. And with that one, I like to think of it as two ways. So if you're having a lack of motivation, we can also look at into herbs, specifically like the mint family, using something like spearmint or lemon balm that's a little bit more stimulating that isn't like caffeine where you can get kind of the dip in energy after caffeine, but it also kind of like gets you going, gets you energized. And also making sure that you're listening to your body when it comes to movement and not overworking, or if you're feeling like you need to get up and exercise, that's a really good cue to like take a rest day and instead incorporate herbs that will help you kind of like mellow out and wind down. So something once again like chamomile. Chamomile is coming up a lot recently for me. It's so I like herbs that I can use for multiple things. I think that's what makes it a lot. Instead of having like a cabinet full of different herbs, it's herbs that I can use to help me calm down right before dinner or like things that can use not use because I don't like that like terminology with herbs, but things that I can work herbs that I can work with for multiple reasons and having it pared down, I think is really, really good.
I really appreciate that all of the herbs that you listed are really easy to source. You didn't come up with crazy, like super rare or like hard to find plants. Like these are all plants that most people will probably be able to find in a community garden, at a small apothecary, maybe even at like a cool pharmacy even. Like
Yep.
a lot of these herbs are becoming really popular, so I really appreciate that you listed those.
Yeah, that's what I try to go. I try to, and it's not that I'm lazy, it's just I have so much on my plate. Like I want things to be simple. Like I want to be able to go to my local apothecary or to my local co-op and like get these without having to like wait for them to be sourced externally. And also there's also like the environmental impact that is with getting these herbs that are from far away places.
Yeah. Yeah, we're really lucky here that passion flower is a native plant to Tennessee and it is
So,
abundant, abundant, abundant. And then I actually just planted some more skullcap this year because I know that's a plant that I need to work with because I am a list person as well.
yep. It is amazing. And it's also really good for the nervous system. So it's both in the moment, but also long term as well.
Yeah, yeah, I love skullcap. It's a great one.
Hmm.
That's probably like the hardest one out of the whole list that you said to source. But even then,
Yeah, yeah.
it's not like super rare or anything. Awesome. Well, I normally end the podcast by asking if there's any like tips that you have, but you've like sprinkled in tips throughout this whole thing. I don't even feel like we need to cover anything else unless there's anything that you feel like you want to leave people with, like something that they can do today for their hormone health. But I think you listed a lot if you feel like you're,
Add fiber. Add fiber.
oh,
I
add
think that's
five.
the only one that I missed. Make sure you're getting your fiber. Some veggies, some fruit, chia seeds, flax seeds, beans, some bean tacos.
How does fiber affect your hormone health?
So it affects it because you want to be having like a bowel movement daily. That is how our body gets rid of it through like the eliminatory pathways. So if you're chronically constipated, as many of us are, because we don't have a lot of fiber in our diet here in the West, that can lead to issues where it can lead to hormonal acne because your body's trying to find other eliminatory pathways to use that are not as efficient.
I didn't even think about that. That makes so much sense. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. As we wrap up here, if you can let everyone know if you have any upcoming classes or where people can find you to work with you and how they can check you out.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with me. This is so much fun. I am Eclipsic Herbs, either on Instagram, on YouTube. I'm also on Substack now. I'm trying to like write more because I do like actually like writing. So I'm trying to like get back into it. I do have a course on cycle tracking, which I call cycle mapping, that is self-paced, that kind of takes you through the process. And then at the end, we do a chart review. So if you have like any questions or just kind of having that like feedback, that is always nice at the end of a course.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I hope that everyone takes your class because it's so important and a skill that takes a little bit of work to figure out.
Yeah, it's definitely a practice, but it's so well worth it. So well worth it. And it's something that you'll use for the rest of your life, basically.
Yeah, yeah, true, true. All right. Well, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
And that was my discussion with Denise. I am so glad that we did that. It's truly insane how much we are not taught about our bodies, and that's kind of a journey that I've been going on for about 6 or 7 years now, where I am just really digging into everything women's health and learning everything that I don't know. And obviously, I'm still learning because I was still surprised by some of the stuff that she said. So, I highly encourage you to follow her, check out her website, check out her courses. You can find her on social media at Eclipsic Herbs or eclipsicherbs.com. And I hope that you walk away with some new insight and inspiration to dig into your own personal health. If you would like to find out more about my upcoming classes and offerings, you can find me at rootandwandercollective.com. I'll see you along the plant path.